Truistory Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
Truistory Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Riley Dawson was born just as the first frost of autumn brushed the cornfields outside Willow Creek, a tiny farming community where time seemed to move in slow, steady rhythms. Her earliest memories are of sitting on her mother's lap in the worn rocking chair by the hearth, listening to the crackle of firewood as Mama Karen hummed lullabies about distant cities and grand adventures. Their two-room cabin, paint peeling, sagging at one corner, stood on a quarter-acre plot enclosed by a sagging split-rail fence, the outline of which Riley could trace in the dusk's glow. There was a certain pride in that humble home. Every scratched plank, every stubborn nail carried the weight of her mother's tireless devotion. From the day Riley could walk, she followed Mama Karen out to the fields. At dawn, they bundled in hand-me-down jackets and boots caked with last season's mud, and together they picked beans under a sky still painted in twilight blues. Karen worked 2 jobs, tending the fields in the morning and cleaning classrooms at the local elementary school in the afternoon, to keep Riley stocked with fresh notebooks and pencils. Riley would watch her mother's shoulders tighten and release with each swing of the broom, memorize the faint lines of worry around her eyes, and vow that she would make every sacrifice count. School in Willow Creek wasn't easy. The ancient brick building creaked with age, its hallways echoing the footsteps of just a few dozen students. Riley was often the only girl in her grade who wore hand-me-down dresses sewn by her mother, while others traded name-brand backpacks and chased the latest trends. Riley found solace in the pages of battered library books. She devoured stories of explorers in the Arctic, engineers in Silicon Valley, and poets on Broadway stages. Each chapter built a bridge between her two-world existence, a cabin among the corn and a university campus pulsing with possibility. By junior year, Riley's grades had become the pride of Willow Creek High School. Teachers whispered about her at faculty meetings, a natural leader, an exceptional writer, destined for something beyond these fields. But those whispers never quieted the doubts that twisted in Riley's chest. She knew the statistics. Girls from families like hers rarely got past community college. Scholarships felt like lottery tickets, impossible long shots. Still, every night, she lay under the single bulb in her bedroom, charting out scholarship applications, drafting personal essays that bled with stories of hardship and hope. One evening, as wind-driven rain rattled the cabin's windows, Mama Karen slipped into Riley's room with 2 mugs of steaming cocoa. She sat on the edge of Riley's narrow bed and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her daughter's ear. "I've seen you work harder than anyone I know," she said, voice soft but firm. "No matter what happens, you carry our family's heart everywhere you go." Riley closed her eyes, memorizing the scent of pine cleaner on her mother's blouse, the gentle tremor in her words. She realized then that her mother's faith was a mantle she could wear into any battle. Summertime brought the annual county fair, Willow Creek's rare burst of excitement. Riley competed in the science exhibit with a model solar cooker she built from old baking trays and discarded windshield glass. When the judges crowned her Youth Innovator, the applause echoed louder in her heart than any she had ever heard. For a moment, she felt seen, not as the awkward girl from the patchwork cabin, but as a creator, a dreamer, a contender. That evening, under strings of carnival lights, Riley and her mother shared a single funnel cake, powdered sugar clinging to their laughter. Riley vowed she'd taste sweeter victories yet to come. As graduation approached, the weight of decision pressed down on Riley's shoulders. She'd been offered an interview at Pinewood University, 2,000 miles away, nestled between mountains and coastline. The application required recommendation letters, SAT scores, and an essay that reveals your true self. Riley spent nights inhaling the silence of their cabin, fingers dancing over the keyboard as she poured her soul into the essay, stories of dawn-filled mornings, of her mother's sacrifices, of the promise she saw when she closed her eyes. She clicked submit at 2:13 a.m., heartbeat pounding like a drum in her ears. Delayed mail delivery in Willow Creek felt like a test of patience. Every day after school, Riley raced to the mailbox at the end of the driveway, half expecting a rejection. But one warm June afternoon, a crisp envelope bore the Pinewood University crest. Her hands shook as she read the single line that changed everything. "We are honored to offer you admission with a full academic scholarship." Riley sank to her knees among wild daisies, sunlight breaking through willowy clouds as if the sky itself rejoiced. She clutched the letter to her chest, thinking of Mama Karen napping on the couch and whispering a silent prayer of gratitude. That night, Riley and her mother sat on the front steps, legs swinging over the dewy grass. A lone cricket sang in the darkness. "You did it," Karen whispered, pulling Riley tight. "You're going to Pinewood." Riley felt tears prick her eyes, not of relief, but of anticipation. Ahead lay a city skyline, lecture halls, and the promise of a life beyond acres of corn. Yet, part of her ached for Willow Creek's quiet mornings and her mother's unwavering love. In that bittersweet moment, Riley understood that her journey was no longer just her own. It was the culmination of every dawn field, every late-night essay, every sacrifice her mother made. And she was ready to carry those roots wherever her dreams would lead. Riley's first morning at Pinewood University dawned cooler than she'd imagined, the air tinged with a crisp promise of autumn. She hauled her duffel bag across campus, eyes glued to the Gothic stone buildings, their ivy-clad walls whispering of centuries of scholarship. Despite her excitement, butterflies twisted in her stomach. She was the only student she'd ever known from Willow Creek, thrust into a sea of strangers. She paused at the edge of the quad, heart thundering, and scanned the sprawling green lawn, where clusters of students lounged on blankets and sprinted between classes. A pastel-painted sign read, "Welcome Week. Find your tribe." But Riley felt anything but at home. She inhaled deeply, brushing damp strands of hair behind her ear. "You belong here," she reminded herself, repeating her mother's words. Her first class was Intro to Creative Writing, held in Hawthorne Hall, a building so old its wooden floorboards groaned underfoot. Riley found an empty seat near the back, less conspicuous, and arranged her notebook and pen on the desk. As students trickled in, she watched them greet each other with familiarity she couldn't yet match. Then he walked in. Ethan Harper moved with an easy confidence, yet there was something unassuming in the way he smiled. He shrugged off a charcoal-gray backpack embroidered with a Pinewood seal and slipped into the seat directly in front of Riley. His dark hair fell in soft waves over his forehead, and his deep-set hazel eyes scanned the room thoughtfully. He nodded at the professor, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and wire-framed glasses, then glanced back at Riley. Their eyes met for a split second, and Riley's pulse surged as if around her heart had drummed a sudden crescendo. The professor, Dr. Conrad, launched into an overview of the syllabus, short stories, character sketches, journal entries. Riley scribbled notes, but her mind kept drifting to Ethan's easy posture and the way his shoulder blades flexed when he reached for a pen. She forced herself to focus, reminding herself that she was here to learn, to build her future. After class, Riley tucked her notebook into her backpack and slipped out into the corridor. She navigated a maze of hallways until she found the campus cafe, the Quill and Cup. Inside, rows of wooden tables gleamed under antique pendant lights. The scent of roasted coffee beans wove through the air, mingling with the sweet tang of syrupy pastries. Riley approached the counter, scanning the chalkboard menu. "One hot chocolate, please," she said softly, hoping her voice sounded more confident than she felt. As the barista turned, she saw him again, Ethan. He stood in line behind her, hands in the pockets of his worn denim jacket. When he caught her eye, he offered a brief, polite smile. Riley's cheeks warmed. She paid and moved to the side to wait. As the barista steamed milk, Riley felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Ethan extending a small, handwritten note. "It's for you," he said, voice low but clear. Her fingers curled around the note. She hesitated. What if he's making a mistake? Then unfolded the paper. In neat cursive, it read, I noticed your quiet focus in class. If you ever need company or someone to proofread your work, I'd be honored.
E.
Riley's heart stuttered. She looked up, and Ethan's expression was earnest, hopeful. He held out a paper cup filled with steaming cocoa topped with whipped cream and chocolate shavings. Thought you might like this,
he said.
Thank you, Riley whispered, voice catching. She took a careful sip. The rich warmth spread through her like a gentle sunrise. Ethan grinned, relieved. I'm Ethan, he said, extending his hand. Riley, she replied, shaking his hand. His palm was warm, calloused in places, a hint that he'd worked with his hands before. They found a small corner table overlooking the quad. The cafe's windows framed fiery maple leaves dancing in the breeze. Riley tugged at the sleeve of her sweater, suddenly self-conscious. Ethan, sensing her discomfort, launched into a story about his summer internship at a local nonprofit supporting underserved youth. His voice was animated, full of genuine passion. Riley listened, captivated by the clarity of his convictions. In turn, Riley shared her own story, growing up in Willow Creek, the early morning harvest with her mother, her dreams of writing novels that might one day line bookstore shelves. She felt herself unspooling, revealing pieces of her heart she seldom voiced aloud. Each admission drew Ethan closer. He nodded encouragingly, never interrupting, his eyes warm with understanding. They spent almost an hour talking until the cafe's afternoon lull threatened to drift away without their notice. Riley glanced at her watch and gasped. Oh, I have to get to my next class. Ethan's eyes lit with a playful glint. Same here. But maybe we could continue this conversation later, perhaps at the welcome picnic in the courtyard tomorrow? Riley hesitated, her mind swirling with cautious optimism. The picnic was optional, a casual gathering with free sandwiches, juice, and games. Would he really want me there? But Ethan's smile felt like an invitation she couldn't refuse. I'd like that,
she said at last.
Ethan's grin widened.
Great.
I'll see you at noon. 12 o'clock, Riley confirmed. They stood, the moment stretching between them as delicate as spun sugar. Then, in a gesture that showcased a surprising ease, Ethan slipped his arm around her shoulders for an instant, gentle as a breeze. See you tomorrow, Riley, he said, and turned to leave. Riley watched him go, clutching her hot chocolate. The cocoa, now lukewarm, no longer mattered. Her heart was ablaze. She closed her eyes, inhaled the mingled scents of chocolate and autumn leaves drifting through the open window, and let herself believe that this unexpected encounter might just be the beginning of something extraordinary. As she stepped out onto the sun-dappled walkway toward her next lecture, Riley sensed the future unfolding, one conversation at a time, one shared laugh, one secret hope. For the first time since arriving at Pinewood, she felt a spark of certainty that she truly belonged. And while the road ahead remained uncharted, today she had found a compass in Ethan's kindness, and maybe a kindred spirit to walk beside her. Riley carried her satchel up the front steps of the Harper estate, heart pounding like a drum in a silent auditorium. The grand double doors loomed before her, painted a glossy charcoal and flanked by polished brass sconces. She paused, adjusted the collar of her blouse, and took a deep breath. You belong here, she whispered, recalling Ethan's steady gaze. Yet as she knocked, a sudden tremor of doubt crawled up her spine. The door swung open to reveal Vanessa Harper, draped in tailored silk and framed by a cluster of exquisite orchids in the foyer. Her posture was regal, knife-sharp shoulders and chin lifted with an unspoken decree. Judge. Vanessa's eyes, cool, assessing, tracked Riley from head to toe. The soft click of Riley's flats on the marble floor felt as loud as thunder. Riley Dawson, Vanessa said, voice clipped. Ethan's told me some things. She offered a perfunctory nod, an invitation too calculated to comfort. Behind Vanessa, the foyer extended into a cathedral of crystal chandeliers and ivory columns. Riley's world of crackling hearths and peeling paint felt a universe away. Ethan emerged, cheeks flushed with nervous warmth. He took Riley's hand, guiding her into the grand drawing room where his father, Thomas Harper, reclined in a Chesterfield leather chair. Thomas's eyes twinkled kindly, his warmth an undercurrent to his wife's chill. He rose, extended a welcoming hand, and said, "So happy you could join us, Riley. Please, make yourself at home." His smile was genuine. She let a flicker of relief soften her shoulders. They sat at an obsidian dining table set with silver candlesticks and bone-white china. A quartet of soft classical music streamed from hidden speakers. Riley glanced at the menu's elegant script. Roasted root vegetables, seared salmon with lemon beurre blanc, lavender-infused risotto. She fought the urge to straighten every fork, to smooth the crease in her jeans. Conversation began with polite queries, her major, her hometown. Riley answered candidly, "I'm an English major, Professor Conrad's class. Willow Creek is small, but I love it." Vanessa's lips thinned at the mention of community and simplicity. She asked, "Your mother works at the school?" Riley nodded. "And your scholarship quite impressive." Vanessa's praise felt like stones polished on a wheel, beautiful but still stones. Ethan, sensing the tension, turned the topic to Riley's Science Fair Award. Her solar cooker design was groundbreaking, he said, eyes bright. Vanessa's gaze flicked to her son. "Yes, very rustic ingenuity," she said, voice edged with condescension. Riley bit back the urge to shrink. Dinner continued in uneven rhythms. Vanessa probed Riley's plans post-graduation. "Surely you're not limited to small-town ambitions?" she asked. "Pinewood is only the beginning." Her smile curved like a scalpel. Riley steadied her voice. "I'm considering graduate school, perhaps a fellowship in New York." Vanessa raised a delicate brow as though tolerating a misguided child. Ethan reached across the table, palm warm against Riley's hand. "She has every right to aim high," he said softly. Riley's heart fluttered at his defense. Yet Vanessa's gaze hardened. She drained her water glass, set it down with clinical precision. "Ethan, we need to discuss more practical partnerships," she said, tone shifting to business. "We have interests, investments, foundations that demand a certain pedigree." Riley felt an icy draft sweep across her chest.
Pedigree.
A term designed to separate worth from wealth, roots from privilege. She swallowed bile, reminded herself that pedigree did not measure courage. "I believe meaningful partnerships can bridge backgrounds," she said, voice firm though her insides quaked. Vanessa's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How noble," she replied, then turned to Thomas. "Shall we relocate this discussion to the library?" The gathering rose, and Riley followed them down a hallway lined with family portraits, stern ancestors in powdered wigs, patriarchs in starched collars. In each frame she saw privilege etched into every feature. In the library's hush, Vanessa guided Riley to a leather wingback chair beside a roaring fire. Ethan took the opposite seat. Thomas placed a hand on Riley's shoulder. "Don't mind my wife," he said gently. "She has her standards." His confession felt like a lifeline. Riley managed a tentative smile. Vanessa perched at the edge of the rug, knees together, eyes unmoving. "Ethan is set to join Caldwell and Company next summer," she said. "It's a demanding position, travel, client relations, the constant mix of boardrooms and banquets." She leaned forward. "He needs a partner who understands that world."
Can you keep pace?
Riley glanced at Ethan, whose expression wavered between hope and worry. She thought of the nights hunched over laptops, her mother's encouraging words echoing in her mind. She straightened. "Let courage fill the quiet spaces between heartbeats." "I may not come from boardrooms," she said, "but I've learned perseverance in every sunrise across those cornfields. I adapt, I learn, and I stand by the people I care about." A silent moment stretched, Vanessa's eyes narrowing. Then she nodded, ever so slightly. "Very well," she said, voice softer. "We'll see how you manage these new responsibilities." She rose and extended her hand. "Welcome to the family, Riley Dawson," conditionally. Riley accepted the handshake, her grip steady, though her pulse roared triumphant. As Ethan guided her back toward the foyer, she realized the wall of expectations had shifted. She'd built her own foundation, not of pedigree, but of grit and integrity. And though the wall still loomed, she now carried the tools to climb it, one determined step at a time. The morning darkened to an ominous gray as storm clouds gathered over Pinewood's campus. Riley awoke to the distant rumble of thunder, its low growl echoing the unsettled knot in her stomach. She lingered in bed a moment longer, fingers curled around the embroidered edge of her quilt, reluctant to leave the fragile warmth of the covers. By the time she forced herself upright, the wind was rattling the dorm window, and fat raindrops pounded the pane like a drumbeat of forewarning. Across campus, Ethan navigated the slick pathways between lecture halls. His worn leather jacket, unbuttoned in his usual careless style, did little to shield him from the onslaught of cold rain. Water beaded on his dark hair and dripped in steady streams down his forehead. Despite the chill, there was purpose in his stride. He had promised to pick Riley up for breakfast before her 8 a.m. seminar, and he refused to let her face another morning alone. Riley emerged from Jameson Hall at exactly 7:45, umbrella in hand, hood pulled low. She held it at an awkward angle, half hoping Ethan's presence would negate the need for the cumbersome item. Instead, she felt the umbrella's metal ribs press uncomfortably into her palm. She trudged toward the cafe on First Meridian, boots splashing through blossoming puddles. The moment she entered the Quill and Cup, she spotted Ethan at their usual corner table. Unmistakable even in the dim light, he sat upright, shoulders squared, with a single cup of black coffee steaming in front of him. Relief washed over her. She clutched her umbrella tighter and hurried forward. "Hey," Ethan greeted, voice warming like a crackling hearth. He rose and offered her his jacket, but Riley shook her head. "I've got this." He nodded, scanning the menu board for something comforting. They settled as rain lashed the windows. Neither spoke for a moment. The silence held the weight of shared storms they'd weathered together before. Riley sipped her hot tea, trying to quell the flutter in her chest. Ethan's eyes found hers, concern flickering behind the usual easy smile. "Rough night?" he asked gently. She hesitated. "Just nerves." The phrasing felt hollow even as she said it. They both knew Emily Harper, Ethan's younger sister, was in town visiting family, and his mother had insisted on a formal gathering at the Caldwell estate that evening. The thought rattled Riley's confidence. She knew what waited behind that grand facade. Instead, she pivoted. "What about you? How's your presentation prep?" Ethan gave a small shrug. "Getting there." "But," he added, voice softening, "I need to talk to you later. Something came up with my family." They finished breakfast in tenuous comfort before she headed to her seminar and he to his business ethics class. The day unfolded in a blur. Lectures on Faulkner, group discussions about nonprofit funding, hurried glances at watches that insisted time moved too swiftly to catch breath. By afternoon, the sky had turned midnight black. Thunderclaps rattled windows and sent students scurrying for shelter. Riley lingered in the library stacks longer than intended, lost in research. When she finally surfaced, rain pelted down in a curtain of water. She pulled her hood tight and dashed toward the parking lot, glancing anxiously at the storm-lashed road leading to Evan Drive. There she saw the wreck, a twisted heap of metal beneath a lone street lamp's pale glow. The car's crumpled hood reflected the lamp's sickly yellow light, and red taillights blinked like wounded eyes. Her breath caught. Heart hammering, she recognized the vehicle's shape, her instincts screaming that it belonged to someone dear. She fumbled for her phone, dialing Ethan's number with shaking fingers. The line rang once, twice, then cut off. Panic surged. She dashed across the slick asphalt, skidding at the curb, and approached the wreck. Ethan lay on the wet ground, limp, beneath the mangled driver's side door. His jacket was torn, rain-slicked hair plastered to his forehead, and a dark stain spread across his chest where he'd hit the steering wheel. Flickers of life flickered in his hazel eyes as they fluttered open and then closed again. Riley screamed, flinging herself beside him, pressing fingers to his neck. No, 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 Ethan, stay with me, she shouted, reaching for his hand. His pulse was a ragged whisper beneath her trembling fingertips. She drenched his face with rain, willing him to wake. Around her, the world blurred into strobing headlights and urgent shouts. A figure in a reflective vest knelt beside her. Paramedic. We've got him, the paramedic said quietly. Let's get him out of the rain. They lifted Ethan onto a stretcher, securing him with straps. Riley climbed into the ambulance without hesitation, taking a seat beside him. She watched his chest rise and fall, shallow as a bird's, and wrapped her arms around his hand. You promised me you'd be okay, she whispered into the din of wailing sirens. You promised. At Harborview Medical Center, the fluorescent lights burned overhead as doctors and nurses converged on a gurney. Riley followed on foot, heart lodged in her throat. Inside the emergency bay, they whisked Ethan through double doors marked trauma unit. She was offered a chair nearby, but she stayed on her feet, eyes fixed on the door, willing it to open. Hours bled into one another. In restless intervals, Riley paced the sterile hallway, mind replaying every moment. The drip of rain, the crunch of metal, the shock in Ethan's eyes. A nurse finally emerged, face drawn. Ms. Dawson? Riley nodded, barely breathing. He's stable, but in critical condition. He has multiple fractures and internal bleeding. We need to operate immediately. Yes, do whatever you have to. Riley choked out. They wheeled Ethan away, the doors closing behind him with a soft click. Riley sank to the floor, back against the wall, tears sliding down her cheeks unbidden. Please come back to me, she prayed, words swallowed by the antiseptic air. When dawn broke, it was pale and pitiless. Riley hovered by a window in the ICU waiting area, clutching a travel mug of stale coffee. Her journal lay open on her lap, pages blank. She thought of her mother's words, "Carry our heart wherever you go." She pressed trembling fingers to her chest, seeking that warmth now tethered to Ethan's uncertain life. A doctor approached, coat flapping like a wounded bird. Ms. Dawson? Riley jumped to her feet. He's through the surgery, the doctor said, voice gentle. The bleeding stopped. He's on a ventilator, sedated for now. You can see him, but be gentle. No sudden movements. Riley followed the doctor down a hushed corridor. There, behind translucent curtains, lay Ethan, pale under harsh lights, tubes snaking from his body like metallic vines. She reached for his hand, fingertips brushing cold skin. His breathing machine hissed on each inhalation, an alien rhythm. I'm here, she whispered, voice raw. Please come back. She stayed until visiting hours ended, then returned to her dorm in a daze. Sleep arrived in fitful fragments, dreams of twisted metal, of Ethan slipping away, of rain that never quenched. When morning light filtered through her window, Riley felt hollow, every muscle bruised by grief's weight. Her phone buzzed with a message, "Meet me in my office. Dr. Conrad." Underneath, another, "Lab results, positive pregnancy test. Call you doctor." The first message spurred her to gather herself. The second floored her with a physical blow. Riley sank to the floor, journal tumbling from her lap. She stared at the message, unwilling to believe it. She hated the word pregnant on her tongue. It sounded like a verdict passed without counsel, a verdict she hadn't prepared to face alone. In a fog of shock, Riley made 2 calls. First to the hospital. I need to see Ethan. Then to campus health. I need an appointment right now. Hours later, she sat on an examination table in a small clinic room, the doctor's sympathetic gaze assessing her. The news spilled out in gentle tones. Yes, you're pregnant. It's early. Your life has just changed irrevocably. Riley closed her eyes, words swirling in a storm of her own making. She thought of Ethan, lying unconscious, life balanced on a surgeon's skill, and of the tiny life growing inside her, a fragile spark in the darkest hours. She clutched the paper towel beneath her knee, knuckles white. After the appointment, she returned to the waiting area, journal tucked under her arm. She opened the first blank page and began to write, pen scratching across paper, pouring out grief, fear, and a fierce determination. I will not let this storm drown me. For both of them, I will be their anchor. In the days that followed, Riley's world contracted to two realities. One, the steady drip of saline into Ethan's veins. The other, the faint flutter in her abdomen that whispered of hope. Friends left voicemails, classmates, Dr. Conrad, even Marcus Reed, offering help. But Riley stood on shaky feet, fortified by a love that refused to yield and by a promise she made in the dark. She would survive this. For Ethan and for the child they would welcome into a world that needed their resilience more than ever. And so began the long night's vigil, a testament to the depth of her devotion. Each sunrise found Riley at Ethan's side, journal in hand, chronicling their battles and breakthroughs. In the pain and the uncertainty, she nurtured a quiet resolve that out of this torrential loss, they would build a future strong enough to weather any storm. The sterile flicker of fluorescent lights could not chase away the chill creeping through Riley's bones. She sat on the edge of Marcus Reed's unadorned office couch, journal clutched to her chest like a talisman. The door closed with a soft click behind her, and the faint hum of the air conditioner reverberated in her ears. Across from her, Marcus, his uniform crisp, badge gleaming, studied her with an intensity that made her heartbeat rotate into overdrive. I've reviewed the reports, he began, voice calm but firm. The Whitman estate is under surveillance. We've confirmed human trafficking activity, kidnapping, and false identities centered around the disappearance of infants. Your front-row discovery of Gregory Whitman tied everything together. He paused and leaned forward. But you need resources, protected housing, legal counsel, psychological support. Pinewood can offer that. Riley nodded, tears threatening but held at bay by sheer will. She swallowed past the lump in her throat. I understand. I need to keep my scholarship, finish my semester. I can't be yanked off campus. Marcus's gaze softened. We're prepared to offer you a safe house, relocation if necessary. But the operation hinges on your cooperation in one more move. He slid a slim folder across the coffee table. On its cover, the words Operation Nightlight were stamped in bold black letters. Riley's pulse hitched.
I'm listening.
The Whitmans expect a tidy exchange, Marcus continued. Logan Whitman, Donna's son, knows you're pregnant. They believe the baby is Ethan's. Their plan is to rescue your child in return for payment. That payment will be cash transferred at a remote location. We need you to agree to that exchange. It gives us grounds to arrest both Logan and Donna with all evidence in plain sight. She stared at the folder, mind spinning. Her stomach tightened at the thought of handing her baby over. Even for a moment. My child, she whispered. Memories of Ethan's pale face in the ICU and the single flutter inside her womb surged together in a tidal wave. But you want me to hand over my child? She asked, voice quavering. Marcus shook his head. We'll arrange for a child welfare officer to be present, in plain clothes. Your baby will never be out of sight. It will be a controlled handover. You'll walk away with your child into police custody the moment Donna steps over the threshold. Your safety and your child's are our highest priority. Riley pressed her palms into her eyes, heart hammering. Images of that warehouse room, the dim bulb swinging from the ceiling, Gregory Whitman's pleading eyes, flashed behind her eyelids. Here was a chance to end the nightmare for every other family like hers. But at what cost to her own heart? She began, voice tight. She inhaled, forcing calm. I'll do it. I'll make the exchange. Marcus nodded, relief flooding his features. He stood and extended a folder. Everything's in there, pseudonyms, timeline, emergency signals. Read it carefully. Riley took the folder, hands trembling. Operation Nightlight scrawled across the top felt like lightning etched into her mind. She closed it gently, steeling herself. The next morning, Riley walked across campus in a daze, folder tucked beneath her arm. Autumn leaves spun in circles on the sidewalks, and students with headphones nodded absently as they passed.
To them,
It was just another crisp day at Pinewood. To Riley, it was the calm before a storm. She slipped past the library's columns and into her creative writing classroom, where Dr. Conrad was setting out novels on the front desk. Riley claimed her usual seat by the window but found her gaze drifting to the folder on her lap. The outline of those ominous letters a dark heartbeat beneath her thigh. When the lecture began, she forced herself to take notes, scribbling character arcs and narrative devices. But her mind kept returning to the ledger. Exchange Point, Old Mill Road, Lot 14, 9 p.m. All day she rehearsed the words in her head. Lot 14. Tribal Code Bravo 8. Evening came wrapped in fog. Riley changed into nondescript clothing, a gray hoodie, worn jeans, leaving behind the bright, hopeful sweaters she'd worn months ago. In her backpack, she packed the essentials. Her wallet, a small herbal tea tin, her phone with an emergency app pre-programmed, and her journal, where she jotted one final line on the back page. For you, Riley Parker. Always. Marcus met her at the Pinewood exit, dressed down in a black windbreaker. His car idled at the curb, headlights off. I'm here, he said softly, offering a reassuring nod. Together, they drove in silence, the campus lights receding behind them. Riley watched the dash as maps recalibrated. Willow Creek Road, Summit Avenue, Old Mill Road. The hours passed in jagged bursts of streetlights and wet pavements. Marcus's hand rested on her knee now and then, a steady anchor. At 8:45 p.m., a deserted industrial lot emerged from the gloom. Rusted chain-link fences, broken street lamps flickering overhead, and the lean silhouette of abandoned warehouses stretched around them. Marcus parked in a shadowed alcove. Stay close, he whispered as they slipped from the car. They walked to Lot 14, identified by a faded 14 spray-painted on a crumbling concrete pillar. Ahead, a lone SUV waited with its engine off, fog clinging to its wheel wells. Next to it, Logan Whitman leaned against the passenger door, phone pressed to his ear. He wore a tailored peacoat that looked absurdly out of place, casting his angular features into sharper relief. Donna Whitman stood a few steps behind him, arms folded, eyes narrowed beneath the street lamp's jaundiced glow. She wore a crimson scarf and held a designer diaper bag slung across her shoulder. Riley's breath caught, and she felt the child inside her flutter like a frightened bird. Behind her, Marcus and two unmarked cars rolled in silently, child welfare officers and undercover detectives. Logan ended his call and looked up. Relief and triumph mingled in his gaze. He strode toward Riley, voice smooth as poured honey. Riley, you came. She forced a smile, her voice soft. You have the money? He patted the inside pocket of his coat. Everything you asked for. He glanced at Donna. Go ahead. With shaking hands, Riley reached into her backpack and retrieved the baby carrier. It was empty. The infant she'd named Grace still resting peacefully in the on-campus nursery under official supervision. The folder had explained. Riley would leave an empty carrier to show her willingness, and the baby would arrive minutes later. Logan's lips curved. Smart. He handed her a sealed envelope. Inside were stacks of bills, hundreds, tens, 50s, enough to cover her rent, her tuition, her living expenses for the next 2 years. She inhaled the crisp scent of new money as she counted under the lamplight. $250,000. Behind her, Marcus shifted imperceptibly. Her heart hammered, time to trigger the signal. Logan gestured toward a small office window. The dusty glass offered a sliver of view to the adjacent parking stall. They'll bring her, his voice trailed as Donna moved forward. Riley nodded, exchanging a glance with Marcus. She flicked open her phone and hit the discreet emergency icon. At that instant, headlights snapped on across the lot, engines idling, blue and white lights swirling. An unmarked van screeched in. 2 officers in plain clothes jumped out with badges displayed. Donna's laughter cracked like ice. What is this? She hissed. Logan's jaw clenched.
Mom.
What? Marcus stepped beside Riley, badge held high. Pinewood PD. You are under arrest for human trafficking, kidnapping, assault, and conspiracy. Riley exhaled, a tremor of release coursing through her. In that electrified moment, the baying dogs of justice had cornered the predators. Logan stumbled back, eyes wide. Donna's crimson scarf fluttered as she reeled at the sight of the officers. "This is sabotage," she shrieked, voice breaking. But the detectives moved swiftly, cuffing Donna's wrists and securing Logan. Riley felt tears spill down her cheeks, tears of relief, exhaustion, and the bitter taste of victory. An officer crouched beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "She's safe," he said quietly, nodding toward the vacant carrier. "Your child will be safe." Riley allowed herself a shaky nod. She didn't need to see Grace to know that, in mere minutes, her baby would be returned to her arms, protected, unharmed. The nightmare had ended. As the Whitmans were led away in separate patrol cars, Marcus guided Riley back to their vehicle. She sank into the seat, hands still trembling. Outside, the rain had begun again, soft, cleansing. "Thank you," she whispered, voice raspy. I couldn't have done it without you." Marcus offered a gentle smile. "You did all the hard work. Operation Nightlight succeeded because you had the courage to walk into that lot, knowing what was at stake." Riley looked ahead at the tail lights of the patrol cars disappearing into the fog. In her chest, the life of her child danced like a promise. She closed her eyes, feeling the first glimmer of dawn after a long night of terror. And in that fragile moment of peace, she knew, no matter what came next, she had reclaimed her destiny. The darkness could no longer claim her. She was ready to step into the light. The Whitman mansion loomed against the moonlit sky like a slumbering giant, its windows dark except for a single flickering bulb at the far end of the east wing. Riley's pulse echoed in her ears as she and Marcus Reed slipped through the wrought iron gates, every footstep muted by the gravel drive. The operation plan had been simple in theory. Infiltrate the estate under the cover of a routine follow-up by child welfare, then gather irrefutable evidence of the infant-trafficking ring. But standing before the grand facade, Riley felt the full weight of her mission settle into her bones. Marcus raised a gloved hand. "Keep your voice low," he murmured. "Security rotates every 20 minutes. Our window is closing." Riley nodded and followed him along the manicured hedge maze, her breath visible in the cold November air. The hedge walls were taller than she expected, a deliberate labyrinth designed to conceal the grounds from prying eyes. Every twist and turn made her heart pound harder. A single wrong step could lead them into the path of armed guards or motion-activated floodlights. They emerged in a clearing at the mansion's rear entrance, an unadorned service door beneath a crumbling stone arch. Marcus produced a slim electronic device and held it against the keypad. A soft beep confirmed the override. The door swung open with a hesitant creak. Inside, the air was warmer but tinged with something metallic and stale. The hallway, lined with dark mahogany paneling, smelled faintly of mothballs and lavender, the latter presumably from expensive sachets placed to mass gauge. Riley followed Marcus past a row of locked doors, each labeled in brass script: pantry, servants' quarters, and boiler room. Their target lay beyond the next corridor, in the heart of the Whitman Empire. Marcus signaled, and they pressed against the wall. Ahead, soft voices whispered, Donna Whitman conversing with Gregory's head nurse. Riley recognized the nurse's steady tone from witness statements. She'd overheard surveillance recordings of the woman administering special care to infants in the Whitman nursery. "Compliance is non-negotiable," Donna hissed. "Logs must reflect only normal shifts. No one can know what goes on behind these doors." The nurse's trembling voice replied, "Yes, Mrs. Whitman. But Governor Caldwell's office has been asking questions." Riley's stomach clenched. The traffic of infants was so tightly woven into local politics that even the governor's staff had begun sniffing around. One misstep for Riley could not only expose the entire operation but also endanger her own life. Following the voices, Marcus led Riley to an ornate double door. He held up a finger, then gently turned the brass handles. The doors opened into a dimly lit nursery, rows of empty cribs aligned like silent witnesses. Pale moonlight streamed through tall windows, casting elongated shadows across the polished hardwood floor. "This is it," Marcus whispered. "They move infants here before shipping them out." Riley's throat tightened at the sight. Dozens of mobiles hung motionless above bare cradles, some bore chipped paint and faded animal figures. A long, low table stood against the far wall, littered with sealed manila envelopes, medical records falsified to conceal parentage and destination. She knelt, gently lifting one envelope. The name inside belonged to a family from across state lines, never reported missing. The ink on the birth certificate was barely dry. Her phone vibrated softly, an urgent text from Detective Alvarez in the surveillance van. 10-minute window starting. Any movement, we sweep in. Riley's breath flickered. They had 10 minutes to collect every piece of evidence. She pulled on nitrile gloves and began photographing the records. Marcus moved to the cribs, lifting soft blankets to reveal hidden compartments beneath the mattress slats. Inside each newborn-sized compartment, Riley glimpsed tiny garments, discarded diapers, proof that infants had been concealed here for hours at a time. Her heart lurched as her gaze fell on one crib in the corner, its mobile missing. The mattress was damp with what looked like disinfectant, though the lingering odor seemed to mask something fouler. Riley leaned closer, and then, a sudden metallic click behind them. Both agents froze. Donna Whitman's silhouette filled the doorway, framed by the hallway light. Her crimson scarf glowed like a warning signal. Behind her, two burly guards emerged, pistols glinting in the low light. Riley's mind raced. This was the moment of exposure. Donna's mouth curved into a slow, triumphant smile. "I wondered when you'd show up, Miss Dawson." Her voice was silk over steel. "Too bad you didn't RSVP properly." Marcus sprang forward, badge in hand. "FBI, hands where I can see them." Donna laughed, sharp as broken glass. She flicked her wrist, and the guards stepped back, hands on their holsters. "FBI? How quaint. I prefer to deal with the Caldwell's private security, and they don't take orders from puppet strings in Washington." Riley felt panic surge through her veins. The guard on the left took a deliberate step forward. Marcus's jaw clenched. "Pinewood PD, drop your weapons." His colleague's silhouette appeared behind Riley, careful to remain out of direct sight. Donna's gaze flicked between them, calculating. "You have no jurisdiction here, sweetheart. You and your professor's pet student scholarship, worthless." She gestured toward the cribs. "This room is chartered under private property. You could be shot for trespassing." Riley swallowed. "You could be dying soon," she thought, but she steadied her voice. "We have probable cause for arrest. These records, and the cages you built, are evidence of felony kidnapping, human trafficking, child endangerment." Her words echoed. The only sound was the soft drip of a leaking faucet. The guards glanced at each other, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. Behind Donna, a soft creak signaled another arrival. Suddenly, Ethan's sister Emily Harper stepped into the doorway, her face pale but determined. She clasped a wad of papers in her hand. "Mom, let them in." Donna's eyes narrowed. "Emily, what?" Emily took a step forward. In her hand were photographs, images of infants in hospital gowns, and then the same babies packaged in shipping containers. "I've seen enough," she said, voice firm. "The governor's office has the same evidence now. You can't protect them." A lethal hush fell. The guards hesitated, then lowered their weapons at Emily's command. Donna's lip trembled as her daughter crossed to place the photographs on the edge of a crib. Marcus seized the moment. "Riley, secure those records." Riley scooped up the remaining manila envelopes and slipped them into an evidence bag Marcus handed her. The agent moved to cuff Donna's trembling hands behind her back. Donna's voice wavered, suddenly raw with fear. "Emily, you betrayed me." Emily's eyes glinted with resolve. "I'm saving lives, Mother." As the FBI team filed in, Detective Alvarez and two uniformed officers, Marcus gave Riley a curt nod. Riot vans rolled onto the grounds outside, sirens silent, but presence loud. The guards attempted to flee but were intercepted. In the chaos, Riley caught a glimpse of a small door marked Private Quarters. A surge of compassion hit her. Gregory Whitman, trapped in that dark room for years, might still be alive somewhere inside. After Donna and the guards were handcuffed and led away, Marcus pulled Riley aside. "We need to find Gregory." He handed her a flashlight from his belt, and they sprinted down a service corridor. The floor plan Marcus memorized guided them: nursery to staff hallway to private wing. Past closed doors and abandoned linen closets, they arrived at a heavy oak door with a tarnished brass plaque, "Mr. G. Whitman." Riley's hand shook as she turned the knob. The door creaked open to reveal a sparse, windowless room. In the corner lay a cot and a small metal wash basin. And on the floor, seated against the wall, was the frail figure of Gregory Whitman. His hair was silvered and unkempt, his face hollowed by years of neglect. His tongue had been slashed and stitched roughly, leaving scars that puckered like dried riverbeds. He turned at the sound of the flashlight's beam and met Riley's gaze with glassy, haunted eyes. "Mr. Whitman," Riley said softly, kneeling beside him. She placed the flashlight on the floor to illuminate his face. "You're safe now." She reached for his hand, and he didn't pull away. Marcus appeared at the door with two officers. "Get him out of here," Marcus instructed. An officer gently lifted Gregory to his feet and draped a blanket over his shoulders. Riley watched as Gregory was escorted down the hallway, pausing to look back at her as if to say, "Thank you." She felt a lump in her throat. By the time the last officer exited the room, Riley closed the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. The adrenaline that had driven her through the mansion's shadows began to recede, replaced by exhaustion and the echo of what she'd seen. Marcus placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You did it, Riley. We have everything we need." He allowed himself a rare, genuine smile. "Because of you, dozens of children will be safe, and so will he." Riley nodded, eyes moist. The evidence bag felt heavier than any textbook she'd ever carried. In that weight lay the stories of stolen lives and the promise of justice yet to come. As they stepped back into the night air, the mansion's outlines seemed less menacing, its secrets finally coming to light. Riley understood then that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to face darkness in order to bring truth into the open, no matter how deep the shadows ran. Rain had fallen the night before, turning the back lot of Evergrove Industrial Park into a muddy labyrinth of puddles and shifting shadows. Now, under a sheet of unbroken darkness, Riley Dawson sat rigid in the front seat of the unmarked Pinewood PD command van, her grip tight on the arms of her chair. Beside her, Agent Marcus Reed adjusted the portable floodlights, their harsh beams slicing through the gloom to illuminate the rows of idling SUVs where SWAT officers, child welfare agents, and undercover detectives crouched like coiled springs. Every officer understood their role: precision entry, secure the perimeter, rescue the child, and arrest the Whitmans. But only Riley knew the personal stakes, her daughter's safety. 20 minutes until 0 hour, Marcus confirmed in a low voice, tapping the digital watch on his wrist. Riley took a slow breath, forcing her racing heart to settle. She folded open a laminated map overlaying the lot's layout in crimson lines. Alpha Zone at the shipping container, where the staged handoff would occur. Bravo Zone at the service entrance leading to the hidden nursery, and the extraction zone near the east exit, where EMTs and a pediatric nurse awaited to whisk Grace to safety. Tiny green dots marked officer positions, unmarked cars, undercover agents, plainclothes detectives, all spaced in a grid so that no angle went unseen. "Remember," Marcus said, leaning close, "your part is to be the frantic mother. Play it real, cry, plead, do whatever it takes. When Logan hands you the carrier, I'll signal and our team moves in. Stay focused." His eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw not the steely federal agent she admired, but a man who believed in her. It grounded her. She nodded, voice barely above a whisper. I'm ready. They slipped from the van into the drizzle, each step echoing off the concrete walls. The shipping container, rusted olive green with nothing but a stenciled number 14 on its side, loomed at the far end. A single lamp overhead buzzed, as if warning trespassers away. Riley pulled her hoodie tighter around her, hood up, chin low. Her college jeans and plain sneakers provided camouflage. She did not want to stand out. Marcus fell into step beside her, his earpiece crackling as entry teams moved into position. A sleek black SUV rolled in, dust swirling under its tires. Logan Whitman emerged, tall and confident in a tailored charcoal coat. He muttered into his phone, then snapped it shut. Two hulking security guards materialized at his side, hands hovering near holstered pistols. Logan scanned the perimeter with steely blue eyes, unaware of the net closing around him. Riley's pulse hammered. This was her moment. She must not betray any sign of weakness. She raised her head and called out, voice trembling but audible over the faint hum of surveillance cameras. Logan, please, I'm here. He turned, eyebrows rising as he recognized her silhouette. He offered a curt nod. You came alone, he said, unfastening his coat to reveal the bulge of a concealed firearm. The guards tensed. Riley's breath caught. She took a step forward, hands raised as if pleading for kindness. I had to see her. I can't wait any longer. Her voice wavered. Tears blurred her vision. She clenched the empty infant carrier in both arms, wrists slick with sweat. Please, just give me my daughter. Logan's lips curved into a thin, satisfied smile. Of course. He motioned to a battered shipping container half hidden under a canopy of tarps. She's inside. The guards pushed ahead, opening the heavy steel door with a clang that echoed across the lot. Inside, dim light revealed a single wooden platform holding the empty carrier Riley clutched. She stepped forward, plastic soles clicking against metal floor, heart pounding so loud she feared it would betray her. At her feet lay scattered infant blankets, soft and pastel, evidence of the lives that passed through this makeshift cell. She swallowed hard. Up on the container's roof, a discreet hatch slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Down came the real carrier, careful hands lowering it into Riley's aching arms. She felt the weight immediately, the unmistakable warmth and softness of her daughter swaddled inside. Grace's tiny face peeked from the blanket, a fragile echo of hope. Riley leaned in, pressing her lips to the carrier's edge. Mommy's got you, she whispered. In that charged moment, Marcus lifted his hand and curled his fingers into a fist, the signal. Across the lot, lights snapped on and engines roared. Uniformed officers spilled from SUVs, encircling the container with tactical precision. Nobody move, crackled over radios. SWAT members fanned out, weapons trained on Logan's guards. Logan jerked back, shock marring his smug facade. His guards reached for their holsters, but before the safety could click off, undercover detectives tackled them to the ground, pinning arms behind their backs. Riley's tears dried as adrenaline surged. Agent Reed strode into the container's mouth, badge flashing. Pinewood PD. You're under arrest, Logan Whitman and Donna Whitman. Suspected in multiple felony charges, including kidnapping, human trafficking, and conspiracy. He motioned to uniformed officers who cuffed Logan's wrists, securing him with steel links that clicked like final verdicts. Outside, Donna Whitman stormed from an SUV, designer scarf trailing, fury in her eyes. She clutched a leather tote but froze at the sight of badges. This is an outrage, she screeched. I have connections. Two detectives seized her by the arms. Save it, one said, guiding her toward another patrol car. Riley stood, cradling Grace. The world felt surreal. The rain, the floodlights, the dozen officers swarming like fireflies in a storm. An EMT knelt beside her, unzipping a padded carrier to lift Grace for a quick medical check. The baby cooed, eyelids fluttering, unaware of the world's darkness. Relief swelled in Riley's chest until her lungs threatened to burst. Agent Reed approached, blanket draped over his arm. He knelt, offering it to Riley. "She's fine," he said quietly. "Thanks to you. She's safe." His words carried the weight of justice done. As backup vans roared in to cart away evidence, false birth certificates, forged manifests, digital ledgers, the warehouse-like lot became a hive of processing. Detectives photographed the carrier, logged the container's contents, and interviewed stunned guards who realized their empire had collapsed in seconds. Back at Pinewood PD's temporary command center, a repurposed conference room, Riley sat with Grace nestled in her arms on a padded bench. Rows of manila envelopes lined a long table. Financial records tracing illicit transfers, shipping logs detailing infant movements, and a damning ledger identifying every child trafficked. Agent Reed reviewed each file methodically, his pen crossing off items as officers bagged evidence in tamper-proof envelopes. Detective Alvarez entered, nodding solemnly. "State AG's office is preparing federal indictments. They want your statement, Ms. Dawson, but you can decide when." His voice was respectful. No one pressed her. Riley's gaze flicked from Grace's sleeping face to the discs and documents on the table. Her mind drifted back to the hidden nursery, where dozens of innocent lives were kept in cruel limbo. This moment had shattered that nightmare. Marcus clicked a final folder closed, labeled Whitman trafficking ring in bold type. He met Riley's eyes. "All because of you. You've saved more than just your own child." Riley nodded, voice catching. "I couldn't have done it without your team." She smiled softly, exhaustion and triumph warring across her features. Grace stirred, tiny fingers curling around the blanket. Outside the windows, dawn's first pale light edged the sky. The floodlights dimmed, anticipation replaced by purpose fulfilled. Riley closed her eyes, letting the early sun warm her face. She had walked into darkness that night, into a shipping container where hope was smothered, and emerged with her daughter and the truth blazing in her hand. In the quiet aftermath, as officers finalized reports and detectives prepared to transport the Whitmans to federal lockup, Riley held Grace close, her heart swelling with fierce love and unshakable resolve. The sting operation was more than a tactical victory, it was the reclaiming of stolen futures. For every child still lost to sorrow, Riley would carry their stories onward, ensuring that no darkness could ever eclipse the light she had fought so hard to restore. The early morning light filtered through the barred windows of the secure courtroom, casting pale stripes across Riley Dawson's determined face. She sat in the front row, Grace curled safely in her arms, as the murmurs of reporters and spectators echoed off marble floors. Behind her, families of other rescued children filled the gallery, each story of vanished infants now converging in this long-awaited moment of reckoning. As the bailiff called the court to order, Riley straightened, her heart pounding with a complex blend of relief and resolve. Today was not merely the end of a nightmare. It was the beginning of justice for every child stolen by the Whitman trafficking ring. The prosecutor, Janice Morales, rose to present her case. She moved with practiced authority, distributing photographic evidence, grainy stills showing infants smuggled through hidden doors, invoices listing merchandise instead of human lives, and the damning ledger recovered from the Whitman container. In the defendant's box stood Logan Whitman, his tailored suit now rumpled, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of his crimes. Beside him, Donna Whitman's once impenetrable poise had cracked into frantic fidgets and hollow glares. Their private security guards, now disgraced ex-employees, watched silently, faces taut with shame. Morales's voice rang clear. These defendants conspired to traffic infants across state lines, exploiting our most vulnerable for profit. Operation Nightlight exposed their hidden nursery, falsified records, and the brutal confinement of Gregory Whitman, whose testimony will confirm every charge. A hush fell as the courtroom doors swung open and Gregory, escorted by marshals, took the witness stand. Pale but steady, he cleared his throat. Unable to speak fully, his sworn written statement, translated by the court stenographer, described 3 years of darkness. The day he uncovered the illegal nursery, his attempt to alert authorities, and the brutal silencing that followed. As the transcript scrolled on monitors, the gallery leaned in, absorbing the harrowing truth. Riley felt tears prick her eyes, but forced herself to remain composed. Gregory locked eyes with her, offering a flicker of gratitude, as if her courage had given him a voice. Next, forensic researchers detailed how DNA samples matched infants in the Whitman records to families in other states, mothers who had wept upon learning their lost children might still be alive. Each revelation tightened the jury's focus, the collective gasp in the courtroom a testament to the horror they confronted. When the prosecution rested, Riley watched the defense attorney rise, a slick performance artist defending the indefensible. He argued that the Whitmans believed they were rescuing unwanted infants, that no parents had come forward, that their operation was a misguided form of welfare. His words dripped with false compassion, but the jury's tightening jaws betrayed their skepticism. Then came Riley's moment. The judge nodded, and she was sworn in. Cradling grace, she addressed the jury. "I never imagined my worst fear would be handing my child over in a shipping container, of all places, only to watch her smile at me before she was saved. Each time I held grace, I felt the weight of every mother who had lost a child. I vowed then to fight not just for us, but for every family destroyed by these monsters. Today, I ask you to see the faces behind the charges. The mothers who wept when reunited with their babies, the children hidden like contraband, and the innocent lives nearly lost forever." Soft sobs rippled through the gallery. Grace cooed softly, as if sensing her mother's triumph. The prosecution called a final witness, one of the pediatric nurses from the sting, which sealed the narrative of compassionate precision that had brought down the Whitmans. Closing arguments followed. Morales appealed to the jury's duty and compassion. Guilty or not guilty will not change the past, but it will send a message that America has zero tolerance for those who traffic in human lives. The defense's attempt at sympathy collapsed under the weight of overwhelming evidence and public outrage. As the jurors filed out to deliberate, Riley held Grace close, eyes fixed on the jury box. The tension coiled in her chest until, at last, the judge called them back. The foreperson rose. "We, the jury, find the defendants, Logan Whitman and Donna Whitman, guilty on all counts." A collective exhale filled the room. Riley's knees went weak. She gripped the bench before her. The gallery erupted into relieved tears and quiet applause. Marcus Reed, seated behind her, dared a triumphant smile. Even the jurors wiped their eyes as families embraced. The sentencing hearing, held days later, was swift. The judge delivered harsh sentences. Decades behind bars for trafficking and kidnapping, plus additional years for conspiracy and assault. The court ordered restitution payments to rescued families and mandated lifelong tracking of infant survivors, ensuring no grace would be lost to bureaucracy again. After the gavel fell, Riley stepped into the crisp morning air on the courthouse steps. Reporters clamored for statements, cameras flashing. But she looked only at Grace, swaddled in a soft pink blanket. Tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, Riley spoke into the microphones. "Today, justice was done. Not for me alone, but for every child who deserved a chance at life with a loving family. We will never forget those who fought in darkness to bring us here. Now we begin to heal." Her words resonated, blunted swords of hope forged in the crucible of fear. As the crowd thinned, survivors' families approached, tears and thanks brimming in their eyes. Riley embraced them all, offering solidarity. Later, driving away from the courthouse under a rising sun, Riley glanced in the rearview mirror at Grace's trusting gaze. "We did it, baby," she whispered. "You're home." Outside, the courthouse receded into the distance. Its heavy doors closed on a chapter of horror. Ahead lay sunlight breaking through storm clouds, proof that even the darkest secrets cannot survive relentless pursuit of truth and justice. The sun rose slowly over Willow Creek, painting Riley Dawson's old farmhouse in soft gold. Dew glittered on the wild daisies that lined the gravel path as she stepped onto the porch. Grace secured in a sling across her chest. For the first time since that stormy night at Evergrove Industrial Park, Riley felt the weight of fear lift from her shoulders. The quiet hum of cicadas greeted her, an orchestra of small wings celebrating the new day. Behind her, Mama Karen bustled in the kitchen, the aroma of fresh coffee and baked biscuits drifting through the open window. Riley took a steadying breath, pressing her cheek gently to Grace's fine hair. The baby stirred, blinking open wide blue eyes as if waking from a dream. Riley smiled, remembering how fragile that life had seemed in the shadows of the Whitman mansion.
Now.
Each heartbeat in Grace's chest was a victory, a testament to resilience and sacrifice. She carried Grace inside, where her mother stood at the counter, flour dusting her apron. Karen turned, her face lighting up in a radiant smile. "There you two are. I was about to bring breakfast out." She reached for a plate and set a steaming biscuit before Riley, then poured milk into a tiny bowl for Grace. Watching her mother's gentle movements, Riley felt an overwhelming gratitude. Without Karen's steadfast love, she never would have mustered the courage to face Logan Whitman or to stand in that courtroom. They ate together in companionable silence, the clatter of cutlery and Grace's soft coos the only sounds. It was a simple scene, two generations bound by hardship and triumph, but in its simplicity lay everything Riley dreamed of: home. After breakfast, Riley carried Grace to the porch swing. The baby kicked her tiny legs, reaching for the morning breeze. Riley reached for her worn leather journal, the one she used to chart her dreams before Pinewood. Flipping to a blank page, she began to write. "Today we start again." Mid-morning, the phone rang with news that felt like a closing chord. It was Agent Marcus Reed, calling to confirm that the federal indictments had been unsealed. Donna and Logan Whitman would serve sentences exceeding 40 years. Every security guard involved faced significant charges, and Gregory Whitman had been granted protected status, moved to a safe facility near Marcus's home where he could recover. Riley exhaled, relief washing over her like a healing tide. She promised to visit once Grace was older, knowing that the man who had suffered so much deserved a second chance at life. Leaving Karen to finish chores, Riley loaded Grace into the old station wagon and drove to the local elementary school gymnasium, where the community had organized a small, homecoming celebration for her and other families affected by the trafficking ring. Banners reading "Welcome Home, Heroes," and "Justice for Our Children" hung from the rafters. Neighbors she barely recognized hugged her, tears in their eyes. They had lost children to that monstrous network and now saw them restored. Others brought casseroles, pies, hand-knit blankets for Grace. Riley felt her throat tighten as she accepted each gift, a mosaic of kindness pieced together by a town that refused to forget. Late afternoon, as the sun slanted west, Riley drove back to the farmhouse, Grace now asleep against her chest. She stepped inside to find Karen hunched over the kitchen table, poring over a brochure from Pinewood University. Riley's heart skipped. "Mama," she asked. Karen looked up, eyes shining. "I received this in the mail today." She slid the brochure across to Riley. An invitation to speak at Pinewood's commencement ceremony as a guest speaker, in honor of extraordinary courage and community leadership. Riley's breath caught. She had once been the girl too afraid to stand out. Now the university wanted her voice to inspire thousands. That evening, Riley and Karen sat on the porch under a blanket of stars. Fireflies blinked in the yard, tiny lanterns dancing above the grass. Grace lay in a bouncy chair beside them, gurgling at the light show. Riley cradled a cup of tea, its warmth a comfort against the cool night air. She thought of the journey she had taken, from cornfields and hand-me-down dresses to the vaulted ceilings of federal court, from the echoing corridors of Pinewood to the shipping container where she risked everything. Each step had been guided by love, her mother's love, Ethan's love, and now Grace's love. Mama Karen reached over, squeezing Riley's hand. "You've done more than survive," she said softly. "You've shown us all how to fight for what matters." Riley leaned her head against her mother's shoulder, tears glistening in the starlight. In the days that followed, Riley settled into a rhythm of gentle beginnings. She set up a small writing desk in the sunroom, determined to finish the novel she'd sketched out during sleepless nights. She coached Grace through cooing lessons and lullabies, each syllable a promise of safety. She volunteered at the county courthouse, helping families navigate restraining orders and social services, paying forward the compassion she received. On the morning of Pinewood's commencement, Riley dressed in a simple navy dress and a single strand of pearls, Ethan's mother's gift, given before tragedy struck. She pinned Grace's pink blanket inside her coat and drove the winding highway to campus. The Gothic spires glowed in dawn's light as she walked onto the field, diploma cap in hand, flanked by faculty and fellow speakers. Thousands of graduates gathered before her, faces bright with anticipation. When the university president introduced her as a woman whose courage lit a path out of darkness, Riley stepped to the microphone. Grace gurgled in the wings, a small miracle waiting. Riley looked out at the sea of young faces, recalling her own first day at Pinewood, so full of doubt, so hungry for belonging. She drew a breath and began. When I first arrived here, I was nothing but a girl from a tiny town, clutching dreams like fragile glass. I never expected to battle monsters or to hold my child as a tool of justice. But pain taught me something vital. That love, an unbreakable bond, has the power to transform fear into action. Today, I stand before you not because of pedigree or privilege, but because I chose to fight for a future where every child is cherished. You will face your own storms, loss, doubt, setbacks. Remember this. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to stand anyway. Let love be your compass. And when you follow its light, you will always find your way home. Silence followed her words. Then a crescendo of applause rippled across the stadium. Riley's eyes found Karen in the front row, cheeks wet with tears of pride. Grace appeared at her side, held by a trusted friend, and reached tiny fingers toward Riley. In that moment, past and present merged, struggles laid to rest, triumphs sealed by hope. As the ceremony closed and the new graduates tossed their caps skyward, Riley raised Grace into the air, catching her daughter's delighted squeal. It was a perfect arc against a perfect sky. Driving home later, Riley felt a fierce peace settle deep in her bones. The road ahead would still hold challenges, parenthood, career choices, unexpected twists, but she no longer feared the unknown. She had learned to navigate darkness and emerge into dawn. Back on the porch, cradling Grace against the first fireflies of summer, Riley closed her eyes and whispered, "This is just the beginning." And as the night chorus of Willow Creek rose around her, she knew her story would continue, light carried forward by love, an unending journey of new beginnings. And that brings us to the end of today's story on Truistory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.